Hi, I'm Mr. Leo Pedregosa, and I'm presenting the seminar for a class in EDSC 301 History and Philosophy of Science and Technology Education for the end of the first semester 2019 2020. My background: I am a math teacher in Los Angeles, California since 2003, and prior to my present assignment, I was a mathematics teacher at the Philippine Science High School in Western Visayas campus. It is my pleasure to share with you today the product of my research in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, project based learning, or STEM PBL. The full title of my presentation is Using STEM Project Based Learning to Reduce Academic Inequalities and Improve Performance of Historically Marginalized Groups in Mathematics Classes. As a background information for this seminar, I would say that the US educational curriculum has been perceived to be at par with the rest of advanced economies, and paradoxically, it is also deemed problematic because while it promotes rigor and quality for all, its implementation produces unintended negative outcomes because of the diverse level of and nature of learners. And because of this, educational practitioners and researchers have been framing a number of pedagogical approaches and strategies to help address the needs of diverse learners in the US classroom. While some of the approaches have been successful, only a few of them met the benchmark of a truly inclusive one. STEM PBL is an inclusive instructional approach where students first presented with the real world problems or issue and then learn the content necessary to answer questions they have derived in response to the problem. The US is a diverse society that incorporates people from different races and socioeconomic abilities. Diversity impacts all elements of American society, including education. Learners from historically marginalized groups, including races, social economic classes, gender, have traditionally registered unsatisfactory educational performance than their ordinary counterparts. Women, for example, people of color, disabled learners, low income learners, and other high risk groups, including immigrants, have traditionally been successful in education than ordinary students. This poor performance can be attributed to numerous factors that include discrimination, academic inequality, culture influence. As of 2016 study on educational inequalities found that the white students perform better than non-white learners across all subjects due to cultural reasons. The study discovered that non-white cultures, such as African Americans and Latinos, are highly subtractive of academic achievement. The study concluded that non-white American culture have less value for education when compared to white cultures. On the same note, according to Jensen, observes that learners from poor backgrounds had lower educational achievements when compared to those from economically stable families. This performance gap was attributed to stress, lack of adequate learning materials, and instructional barriers that students of color faced. The poor performance of students from historically marginalized group in the US is worth the attention of educational policymakers. One of the areas where learners from historically marginalized groups are traditionally performed poorly is in mathematics. Research has over time established several factors that triggered this performance disparity, with a failure to address the needs of historically marginalized learners being the major contributor. According to Berry, learners from historically marginalized group do not underperform in mathematics due to intellectual inferiority, but due to institutional barriers that have been widely ignored. Berry adds that legislation such as the 1958 National Defense Education Act and 2001 No Child Left Behind Act addressed a majority of the needs of marginalized learners, but there remains a large number of needs that have not been addressed. Although past legislation addressed issues such as uh, the legacy of racism, civil rights violation, social justice, the barriers that emerge from within education system have been largely ignored. And as of 2014 Malaysian study, they analyzed the learning environment for students who perform well in math, established factors such as teacher support, students' perception of this closeness, teacher fairness, and cooperation to be significant determinants of mathematics performance. Some of the ways which this disparity gap in mathematics performance in any class can be bridged include a conducive environment where these learners have access to support and well prepared educators who understand the needs of historically marginalized learners. The integration of STEM project based learning in education and a shift from a standardized approach to testing is one way through which a conducive learning environment can be created in mathematics class. The integration of project based learning specifically holds a great potential to improve performance of learners from historically marginalized group in mathematics. Project based learning is not a new concept, although it has been widely implemented in the US education system. According to EU Bueno 2019, STEM project based learning is a multidisciplinary learning approach that entails the application of science, technology, engineering, mathematics to solve real life problems. Um, this study aims to find out how STEM project based learning can be applied in mathematics education to improve the performance of learners from historically disadvantaged groups. With a glaring performance difference between learners from historically disadvantaged groups performing poorly in mathematics uh, when compared to learners who are normal across all grades, there is a need to establish how the performance gap can be bridged. Now, the rationale of this study is this. We know that the changes in our political and educational landscape is very fast. And in order for the students to catch up and fill in the need for jobs in science, engineering, technology, we need to train the students to be well responsive to all these changes. So that's the reason why we need to be inclusive in our educational techniques and strategy so that we cannot leave out other learners in the educational landscape, specifically women, people of color, disabled learners, low income families, and immigrants. So, in order for us to understand what entails the PBL to help and include all learners, we need to understand some of the misconceptions. So, first of all, in the past, we thought all the while that by just making a project, we can already call it a project based learning environment or teaching techniques. But we have to learn that in project based learning, uh, students don't learn the content and apply it to a project. And also, we have to take note that in a, a project, the audiences are in school. And also, we have a well-defined project. Like everything is already made up, everything is already planned, and the direction and criteria are already constructed. And take into account also that student is considered student. Projects are handed to the teacher, and the project are modeled and assignment based. Now, what is the difference between a project and a project based learning? So first of all, when we're talking about PBL, we're talking about the audience are in the real world. We solve real world problems, and it is more organic and open-ended, which means that it is not pre-planned at all. Students are the ones who will identify the problem themselves. They have to work together in a group to be able to come up with a solution to the identified problem that they have. And they need to search for information available either online, in the library, or they can interview people with background on the problem that they're working on. Or they can also look for other things that they can modify, and then take it from there and take advantage of the opportunity of working together and critiquing each other's work to be able to solve the problem that they have. Um, for the PBL, it is also important that we need to be concise in our definition of what PBL is all about. So I chose two definition that was by Rose and EU Bueno, the old definition and the new one. It in Eufeno, it says that STEM project-based learning is multidisciplinary, which means that our project can be in the area of math, but we can also get other ideas from engineering, from science, from other areas where the project is related to. Also, according to Barrow, learning method which involves student-centered learning in a small group led by a tutor or expert rather than teaching using traditional lecture. So, as another misconception, some people think that when they have a project, then it is already a project-based learning, but it is different because we let the students explore and discover what problem they can come up with from any situation, and then formulate the hypothesis, gather data, and then come up with a solution when they can win. We also do critiquing for the kind of data that they have, and the kind of the collaboration that they have, and the kind of the problem that they have. So what's the procedure in doing PBL? Actually, there are 8 strategies or steps. These include clarifying problems, defining the problem, brainstorming, structuring hypothesis, learning objectives, searching for information, synthesis, and feedback. In clarifying, they have to make a 4-column table on the board, and they have to list down the facts in text, the problems, the hypothesis, and formulate the learning objectives. They need to make sure that they understand the vocabulary, and also be able to understand some of the hypotheses that they can come up with in that situation.